All right, guys. Thank you all for joining us today. Today is January the 23rd, 2021, and this is the International Association of Woodcarvers meeting, the weekly meeting that we have on Zoom, where carvers are helping carvers during this pandemic. I want to thank all you all for joining us today. Today we have a special guest on. We're going to have Mr. John Overby on from Dry Creek Carvings. He's up in Wisconsin. He's going to be talking to us today about flat plane carving. Before I get started, I just wanted to run through just a couple of things. At the end of the meeting, we'll be doing a $100 chipping away gift card giveaway. So everybody that is on this meeting, at the end of the meeting, when we do the drawing, will be in for the drawing. You got to be present to win, so make sure you stay on to the end. And Tom will be drawing out a name to give that $100 chipping away gift card away to. So again, stay tuned for that. We'll be doing some other drawings in the future dates. Just something to look forward to and to kind of keep these meetings going. So look forward to that at the end. Coming up on our meetings in the coming weeks, we've got quite a few people lined up, scheduled to come on and talk to us. Next week, Sean Mullenbelt from 51 Bravo Knives will be on with us. He's going to be talking to us about hand forged carving knives. He makes carving knives out of steel that he forges and shapes on a grinder and sharpens. So he'll go through the whole process on that. On the 6th of February, we'll have Claw's Creation coming on. They're going to be talking to us about carving bowls, spoons, and knives. On February the 13th, we've got Brian Melton from Rough Cut Craft out in Knoxville, Tennessee. He's going to be coming on and talking to us about life-size carvings. Lucas Cost is going to be coming on February the 20th. He's going to be talking to us about carving cottonwood bark. On the 27th of February, we'll have Dwayne Gosnell coming on. He's going to do a demonstration and also talk to us about making study sticks. On March the 6th, we have Rich Embling that's coming back. Rich was on at the very beginning when we started these meetings back in April or May of this year. He's going to be doing a demonstration on carving marionettes. And then on March the 13th, we'll have Mary May coming on of Mary May Carving. She runs a school of traditional wood carving, and she's going to be coming on doing a demonstration for us as well. Some other people that we've got lined up, and we're going to have to secure the dates, are Janet Cordell, James Ray Miller, and Alec Lacoste. It's going to be coming back on again, so look forward to those names and the dates coming up. At the end of the meeting, we'll run through some of the classes that we have available that's out there currently for you all to take advantage of. There's probably 5 or 6 of those that I'll go through after John's presentation. But at this time, to allow more time for John, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to him. He's going to talk to us about flat plane carving and his process that he goes through in making his caricature carvings. John, I'll go ahead and turn it over to you. Thank you.
Oh, all right. Well, hello, everybody. So I guess today, as Blake said, we're going to talk a little bit about my big melon back a little bit. Talk a little bit about flat plane carving. And I guess to start it out, I would like to bring up a point. Everybody, when they talk flat plane and they think of flat plane, you know, you see mine on the Facebook and Instagram a lot, and mine have these big, long, flat planes. So you think flat plane, but flat plane does not necessarily have to have them long, flat cuts. It's more about the big, bold, heavy cuts, minimal detail that lets your eye fill in the detail, if that makes sense. So I grabbed a couple examples here. If you look, the last one had some bolder cuts. Here, these things are rounded off. Things can be rounded off in flat plane. And you can see there's not an overabundance of detail into these other than some of his painting. It's just the simplicity of it that that shows you, can't get it to focus. There we go. Simplicity behind it, and You know, this guy doesn't need a whole ton of detail for you to tell what he is and what he's doing. He's walking down the road in his cane or whatnot. So I thought today it would be fun if we went through and I walked you through carving a small, simple, flat plane character out of a block of wood. Something like this guy here. Now, like you can see on mine have less of the heavy, bold strokes, and I can't get my finger to go. And they do have the big flat planes. My excuse for that's always been I've been a machinist for 30 years, so I carve everything square and then I kind of knock the corners off and call it good. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my camera around here, so give me a second. And I'm going to talk to you about how I go about doing one of these guys and process behind it. To get it further away. All right. So when I do these guys, and these are just simple little figures out of a block of wood, hands in their pockets. I grabbed a couple examples here. This guy is, I'm having a problem with my camera. 2 by 2 by 6. This guy is about an inch by inch and a half. So if you want to carve one of these, it really doesn't matter how big or how small. It does kind of help if your block is square-ish. Doesn't have to be perfectly square, but square-ish. And I'll start them out, and all you need is the outline here. His head's going to live up here. Arms are going to live in here. His legs. This one's got it in there a little bit. I'm not real good at drawing, and so typically on a lot of my carvings, I will only do a side view and bandsaw out the side view, and then I'll start bringing everything in from there. So I do that on a lot of stuff that's not from a pre-made pattern. So for these guys, some of you guys will probably be able to pick that up. But like I said, you don't need a pattern. You just kind of want to just draw out where his legs are going to be, a little bit notch here for his chest and the back of his arms. This can be done on these small blocks with just a knife, real quick. Don't need to bandsaw it, or these I bandsawed them out because I made a bunch of them for the show today. And so, well, before I get started, one more little thing on my process. There's no clubs up here where I live in northern Wisconsin. There's pretty much was on my own for a while, and I bought every book I could get my hands on. The Pete LeClaire books are awesome, and Pete does a neat little figure similar to this, but he starts at the top and goes down. And every time I tried to do that personally, I would end up with my proportions way out of whack. And I found for me, and maybe for some other people, it'll help to, when I do these, I kind of, even when I draw them out, first thing I'll draw in is about my feet, and then how long I want my legs. And then, okay, so I know my legs are this long, so then I'll kind of work on the arms so I get them to the point where, okay, that looks good. And then whatever is left for the head is left for the head. So as you can tell, I'm a little nervous here, not too good at this. So when I carve these, I carve them in a similar manner. I start usually by bringing on any carving I do, it doesn't matter if it's these or anything else. I'm more comfortable if I start by bringing the arms out first. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a stop cut underneath his arm here, and I'm going to start bringing that arm out. Am I on camera, guys?
Yeah, you're good, John.
Okay. And how I kind of look at these, I seen an article in an older carving magazine, and I don't remember if it was Ivan Willock or somebody else in there. And a lot of people will carve these small characters from a block. The trick is to carving them from a block is to get them out of the block so that when you're done, it doesn't look like still look like a block. So typically what I'm going to do on these is roughly where I think about the knees are is I'm going to come up underneath the arms. And then from about that midpoint, I'm going to come down here and I'm going to thin these heels out up here on my legs. So already you can see he's getting a little bit of a interest to him here. I don't finish anything too far when I think everything I do is in about 7 stages of roughing. So there all I did was I brought his arms out from his body a little bit, thinned out his heels. We'll give his feet a little bit of shape here. Notch in the middle. Well, I guess one of the things I was going to talk about real quick too, you're going to notice I do everything with a knife. Just because I do everything with a knife, or just because you're going to do flat plane, doesn't necessarily mean you have to use knife only because it's flat plane. Those guys that were doing flat plane back in the day, you know, the Gunnarsons and the Triggs and all of those, they used whatever tools they had. I guess when I first started carving, I was spending a lot of time with our Boy Scout troop, a lot of time camping, and we were gone every weekend almost. And so I didn't want to have a pile of tools to take around. I didn't want to be carrying a two-wheel dolly with a box with me. So I kind of went from there and taught myself minimal tools. I get asked a lot on Facebook why my carvings look so clean. If you look at, it's not that I do anything special or different. I don't have one handy. But if you run a gouge across this piece of wood and you run a knife across this piece of wood, you're going to tell right away the difference in the cut. So by staying with one tool, I get all that same similar, you know, these knife cuts. Knife cuts are nice, clean, smooth. A gouge, even when they're real sharp, tends to tear and whatnot. So, but there again, you don't need a special knife to do these. Any knife you have will do. I prefer a longer blade so I got more reach, but you don't think you have to be tied into something. Just use what you got, have fun with it, and make it your own. All I did here was I tapered the outside of his feet back a little bit, left a little bit in the front. And here he's tapered back to the heels. We can separate the heels a little bit right now. And we'll give his feet a little bit of definition here. So there. So like I think I brought it up. I was kind of looking at here. About where his knees are, I came in and thinned his heels. Here I brought his arms out. So then what I look at when I do them is I'm going to split this elbow right here. Split this elbow here. And then we're going to take that in. And what we want to do is we want the actual elbow to be the widest point. If anybody's got any questions while I'm doing this, I don't know, maybe Blake or Tom can shout them out to me. I'm going kind of fast, I know, because of time. But I know people like to see something getting carved and hopefully maybe learn a little bit, or, you know, maybe if you don't carve one of these, you'll pick up a tip or a trick out of it.
Yeah, John, I've got the chat up and I'm watching it to make sure there's no questions. I'll let you know if I get any.
So now if you can look, I brought from the elbows, I brought this in and tapered this in. So this point of his elbow is going to be the widest point of that. And what I usually do is just give him a little bit of shoulder for now. You'll end up with more shoulder when we get to the rest of it.
Hey, John.
Yep.
Hey, Scott Bill here. So, you know, I'm fortunate enough to have two of your carvings. One I got for one I tell my wife I got for her, but I really got it for me. It's definitely got for me. But hey, so my question is, you know, you see some books, you see some websites talking about Scandinavian style carving, and then, you know, it's a particular knife. Is there any kind of difference in the knife that you're using than any other bench knife or rough out knife?
No. Part of it's preference. I like a 2-inch blade. The biggest thing personally that I like is I like a stiff blade. This one could even be thicker. I'm not a fan of the flexible blades, especially for this, because I want that knife to go where I want it to go. I don't want it flexing out. If I want to put a curve in there, I can. But I don't know. I've seen somebody asked on Facebook this morning something about rolling your knife, but that's never been an issue. I've never broke a knife rolling. But otherwise, yeah, you don't need a special tool, a special knife, or anything. But like I said, I do prefer a stiffer blade.
Hey, John, do you run into grain issues with flat plane carving?
Yeah, the same as everything else. You always run into grain issues. You just pretty much, a lot of things though, like on doing one of these guys, you're always getting in at an angle. You know, you might start out going straight, and if my grain was running the other way before, as I cut that arm back, it's going to start going at an angle. So you're going almost, you know, it's not much, but you're going a little bit cross grain, so that grain problem will go away. But otherwise, you just, if it didn't want to cut this way, I'd just turn it around and I'd cut it this way. But I think you're going to run into that with any kind of carving. It doesn't have to necessarily be in flat plane. So Now that we've got his arms sent back a little bit, I usually run this top part of the arm. I make it wider than it has to be here because I can bring it back later.
John, I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
How do you stay disciplined to just do the flat plane carving? I'm so used to doing the round, you know, and it seems to me hard if I try to do that. How do you stay focused and stay without taking those edges and rounding them off?
Because I never really rounded many off. Just like, I guess it's the same for me. I have a hard time rounding things depending on what I'm carving. There are some things that I round off, like if I do a wizard or a Santa, I'll tend to, you know, but I'm talking, you know, bigger shapes. It's hard to do that. I guess what it amounts to is early on, I found what worked for me and kind of found my own little niche. And now I have a hard time doing other styles.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I don't know how to explain it. It's just you got to find what works for you, you know. I hear a lot of people say, I want to carve like so-and-so. I want to carve like so-and-so. Well, I want to carve like me. I want to have so-and-so skills, but I want to carve like me. Does that make sense?
Yes. Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, John, another question from the chat. For the beginners, do you think flat plane carving might be one of the easiest styles to learn and then progress into more detailed style of carving? What's your thoughts on that?
There again, I guess what clicks with you. My style of flat plane carving might be easier for a beginner because of the long cuts and how I kind of like a figure like this, how I break it down. But you know, I don't know. That's everybody's so individual. That's a hard one to that's a hard call to make. I don't know. I guess I don't have an answer for that one. So here,
and then another question. Somebody's asking where you get your inspiration for your Ole adventures and stories that you post on Facebook.
Oh, 100% off the internet. Ole and Lena have been around longer than I've been alive. I've been hearing Ole and Lena jokes since I was a kid. There's books by Red Strangland. There's websites divide, you know. So all I'm doing is sharing. It kind of started when I first got on Facebook. See here, everybody got me ahead of myself. I don't normally do that part yet. We'll go over here and cut. Let me get caught up here and then I'll answer the question. I normally don't set this arm yet. Normally I set this here. Oh, I'm gonna get another thing. When I first got on Facebook, people were doing Throwback Thursday and they would post an old carving for Thursday. And since I was new to it, I didn't have many old carvings. And I thought, what can I do to promote my page? And I'm flipping it around here a bunch, guys. I'll show you what I'm doing in a second. What can I do to promote my page and keep it fun? And I thought, you know what? I'll post an Ole and Lena joke because they're Scandinavian along with my Scandinavian carvings. And it just kind of took off and got a life of its own right there after that. So what I did here, normally I do that before I set the arm in, is I kind of brought this in, trying to get there. See, it's hard to show you guys from here. But what I did was I swooped this in from to bring his arm out from his body. So this will end up being his coat and his chest here. And we'll bring this one up to match it, or at least as well as we can match with the
So, John, what got you interested in carving?
Well, when I was little, my grandpa used to carve these angels that I thought were his own pattern. And I'd always ask him, you know, Grandpa, can I carve something too? But my grandpa married late in life and he didn't have much patience for a kid. But he let me carve a little bit. I think I carved a little canoe out of a block of wood or something like that. And, then I'd always had an interest, but never did anything with it. And I'm one of them people that's got to be fiddling all the time, whether it's a piece of string in my hand, tying knots, or constantly fiddling. And like everybody else, I'd see wood carvings and whatnot here and there, and I'd think, oh, I can't do that. You know, I'm not artistic that way. I don't think I can do that. And then around 2012, I think it was ish, I attended a training course for the Boy Scouts for adult training called Wood Badge. And all the guys there at Wood Badge had diamond willow walking sticks that they were, like if one of the guys was up giving a presentation, the rest of them were sitting behind us distracting us because they were whittling faces and all this on all their diamond willow. Well, I was totally enthralled by that diamond willow. I had to have one. So I went home, looked up where to find it, found out it's growing out in my ditch, went and got myself some diamond willow. And then I got it all done and I thought, well, now it needs a wood spirit. So I got to learn how to carve a wood spirit. And it just kind of went, once I figured out how to carve a really homely, ugly wood spirit, it just kind of snowballed from there. And I just got obsessed with it, I guess. Now, I'll leave for work about a half an hour early and sit in the parking lot just so I can carve a little bit before work. Because I know if I start carving at home, I won't make it into work. So my truck's full of wood chips, and everybody in the house complains about having wood chips in their underwear.
I'd like to make a comment in regards to the wood you're using.
Mm-hmm.
And it looks like it's all straight grain wood, basswood.
Yep.
But I'm sure that there are people that try to carve something like this out of kiln dried wood or real grainy wood, which was talked about right at the beginning. But it's important, I think, to look at your wood and look at the bottom of your. Let's look at the bottom of your caricature there. Can you see that the grain is straight across there? And look at the top of it too. You can maybe see it. And see that the grain is running straight vertically there. Can you see that? And so if you had a lot of cross grain, it would chip out and cause a lot of problems. So I just want to make that comment that when doing something like this, it's important to have good quality wood or you're going to be chipping out.
Well, part of that's true, but I can tell you, like this isn't the most quality piece of wood. All my wood's out in the garage. It's January in Wisconsin, so that means it's dry. unless it's snowing, it's dry. So this is kiln dried. I seen Denise Chevy was on here a little earlier. I got this piece of wood from Denise last time I was down in La Crosse. I have kiln dried, I have air dried. And right now, this one's a little bit splintery, a little bit flaky, but not too bad. I've had good and bad with both. I say don't let thinking that you have to have the best knife. Don't let thinking that you have to have the best chunk of wood keep you from carving something. Not every piece has to be a masterpiece either. I mean, I'm not trying to take away from what you just said there, because you are right. This one's pretty tight grained. I don't know how to. As you can tell, people, I'm a machinist, not an orator. Whoops.
Well, another thing that you mentioned that it's kiln dried. Well, don't you find that kiln dried wood is harder to carve than what regular open dried wood? In other words, this is a time of the year that a lot of trees are cut and the sap is running out of the trees. And so they can cut it up and sticker it and let it outside to dry during the spring of the year, and then put it under a shelter somewhere and let the air blow through it in the summertime. And you'd get a much drier piece of wood, but still not have it really hard like a kiln dried piece of wood.
I've had good and bad with air, and I've had good and bad with kiln. Honestly, I think it depends on more where it comes from in the tree. Heartwood versus sapwood.
Yeah, and up in northern Minnesota, northern Wisconsin, you have slow drying trees, which are going to be better than down south, I think.
Well, and that's why they cut them in the winters, because right now the sap is down.
Yes.
But honestly, up here, they hate basswood. Basswood's trash. It don't burn for shit, so nobody wants it in their fireplace.
Yeah.
Most of the basswood that gets cut up here gets turned into pallets and stickers under the pulp piles. But yeah, it is slower growing. That part there gives them the gives you the tighter grain. But I've had kiln dried. This piece of wood right now is kind of dry. You can feel it in the weight. You can feel it in your fingers. It's kind of dry. This same piece of wood in April, when it starts raining and the moisture's up in the air, will probably cut like butter. I've had a little bit of luck with these. If I get a real bad piece, to throw like a piece like this into a Tupperware dish and put a damp paper towel in there, not on it, but next to it in the Tupperware, and let it get a little moisture back in. And that's worked. But otherwise, I often wonder what it'd be like to get a real nice piece of wood, because not all my stuff is real nice, but I can fill the back of my truck up for $100 too. So there's a lot to be said for that as well. They get to practice a lot more than other people that have to order it, I guess. So since I've been talking and whittling at the same time, I'm going to kind of tell you what I did. We brought his arms in from the elbows up, and then we brought his arms in again from the elbows down to tuck him into his pants here a little bit. We've thinned his heels and thinned him up here a little bit. For this guy, we're just going to give him a jacket, kind of like it's draped over his arms. So I'm going to follow this line and bring this down in here somewhere. And the same on the other side. Follow that, bring it down in there. And bring that there. And what we'll do is we'll bring out his jacket a little bit. give them a shirt in there. See, some places flat plane can be nice. What I do with this here is just those couple cuts. Brought his coat out and gave him a shirt. And I want to leave that point to that shirt sticking up. I don't want to try to get in there and flatten it off and give him a round shirt. Holy. So give him a shirt, and then just about where his arms go in, just around that area is where his waist would be, because his hands would be in his pants pockets. There would be the bottom of his shirt. But remember, big, bold cuts. They don't necessarily have to be the long cuts like mine are. That just kind of ended up being my style, and I'm not sure if I could carve like somebody else. And then for now, we'll just bring this out a little bit. I like to just mark off. Basically, I'm marking off where I put that pencil line.
Hey, John, another question from the chat. Somebody wants to know if you teach online classes.
I have not. As you can tell, I'm so comfortable with the camera. But I have not, no. In the future, I don't know. I'm not going to say no, but I'm not looking for it either in the future. So then I'm going to hold on, I'm going to shut the door again. We got a 6-7 month old puppy that doesn't know he's 100 pounds. And
boy, Johnny, that's a pretty pink knife.
Isn't that special there, Brother Rich?
Oh, yeah. So what do you prefer, the Series 1 or Series 2?
No, depends on what I'm doing. The series, this is a Series 1 blade, and then this is the Series 2. The Series 2 gives me a little bit, it's a little smaller up in here, right in here, so I can reach in somewhere. But other than that, they're all nice knives. Can't go wrong with a Helvey. So here I'm going to split up his arms. One of the things you want to watch when you're doing nothing but knife work is anytime you can use this part of the blade versus the tip, you're not going to get all them knife marks like down in here. I got a couple in here because I'm rushing. But the one thing you want to avoid, they'll stick out like a sore thumb, is if you know, if I was cutting all this and I went too deep and there was a whole bunch of knife marks in there. So it's not always, I'm going to take a little bit off the back here. We don't need that much head in the back.
John, another question from the chat. Somebody's wanting to know how many carvings you do in a year.
Well, geez, I've never counted. More than a few. I probably get 1 to 2 a week done. Might not all be they might not all be a masterpiece, but I try to get at least, I'd say 1 or 2 a week done.
Somebody else said your pieces tend to have a signature look. Is there a specific area on your carving that you focus on to give it that John Overby look?
I'm mostly focusing on not making a mess out of it. It doesn't matter. Every single carving I've ever done, right about halfway through, I look at it and I say, it's junk. There's no way, absolutely no way this is going to come out. And usually, you just got to keep going a little further. And pretty soon it's like this. I've got this one going right now. Trying to keep things in the camera here. This guy here, I'm at the point where it's like, wow, his head's way too big. And I'm just not, I don't like it. I don't like it. But I'm too far along to quit. So usually that's where I'm at on every carving. And at some point, things will start to come together. Things will start moving in. I'll probably shrink his head down a bit. Or I don't know, maybe when it's done, it'll look good with an oversized melon too. But as far as signature, probably the faces, even though they're starting to look all the same. I would say my faces are probably the most signature signature of them. This guy is from the same basic pattern we're carving now. He's a hobo, but he lost his bindle staff. Hang on, everybody. Holy! But even my ladies, some turn out, this one's not too pretty. Some turn out pretty, some don't. When I carve a lady, I carve her exactly the same as I carve a fella. Then I just round it off more, and on the fella, I leave sharper planes on there. But I would say if there was something signature, it would be either the big long cuts or the faces. So.
And John, how many years have you been carving?
I guess seriously since about 2012, so 8 years ish. Been take and split his front legs now. Doing this is one part that I have a bad habit of getting too deep down in here and then ended up chasing it. So keep that in mind if you try one of these or any other guy with this. If the piece warrants it, I like to take and run a bandsaw up the middle, and then I don't have that problem of chasing down in there. So where are we? This one's about as rough as a cob from Russian. Take these saw marks off. And give him a little bit of shoulder up here too. Make sure we get his head forward on that. I guess what looks good to me when I'm doing it doesn't look as good to you folks. So at this point, I'm going to keep going on the bottom and show you how I get these legs in. And then we'll block in his head. So I'm going to start by giving him some pant cuffs. And there again, roughly where I think the knee is going to be. We want to get this guy so it doesn't look at the end straight up and down Lego block. We want to get him out of the block, but still be square. There's kind of a There. We're gonna bring that pants cuff back here. Kind of just work on the one side for sake of time. So if I get it to focus. So what I did was I come around here and I gave him some cuffs on his pants. And then from that point up, we're going to taper it up this way and give him a little more depth here. So now if you look from the side, his elbows are out, his jacket's kind of flared out over his arms, and his pants have kind of a baggy bend to them. All that kind of helps in get rid of that block look.
Hey, John, do you ever split the legs on a bandsaw?
Yes, I do quite a bit. This one I did, and then I ended up really making them bow-legged. He still got some cleanup to go. I think his feet are too big, so I'll bring his feet down. These little ones I generally don't, because generally if I don't remember if it was when we were talking earlier, if I told everybody, I generally keep a half a dozen of these blocks in my truck, because from this same block you can carve little people, tons of ornaments. You can make little stick Santas like Stetson's Arizona Santa. There is so much you can do from the small blocks. So I'll just keep a stack of them in my truck, and if I'm stuck somewhere, it'll be just whatever grabs my fancy at the time. So, but yes, I do split the legs on quite a few of them. The worst part about this whole project is this section here. Is you want to bring them pants back just a little bit from his shirt and coat, so that they come out from the block a little ways. But it's hard to get a good there. If you can see the difference. Well, it's amazing how much junk shows up on the camera. This part in here is probably the worst part of these. And then also, what makes this part a little easier is once you knock these corners off, and this is where everybody says I have a hard time between rounding and square. If you notice, I carved these arms, you know, at a 90 big flat and another 90. So all you got to do is you're just going to knock that corner off. It's a simple straight cut, but you can also give it some character. If it can be the long cut, but you can swoop it and give them a whole different look too. And still have the long, big planes. But once you taper that, then that gives you a little bit more room to bring these pants up there a little bit nice and tight. And give them a little bit here.
A couple of other questions, John.
Okay.
One, what are the dimensions of the basswood that you typically make the carvings out of? And the second one is, of the old time flat plane carvers, who's your favorite or biggest influence?
Well, my biggest influence, you know, to start out was obviously Harley Russell, because he has the most he's the most accessible. He's got a lot of books, a lot of how-to. He's got there's a good excellent video out there. He's still teaching classes, so Harley was a huge influence on. And one of the things that my biggest struggle with any kind of carving is arms and legs. Not as much legs, because there's only so much you can do with a leg, but arms in different positions, like this sitting fella here doing arms like this, or arms behind the back, or arm out doing anything. That's where I'm really, I've been trying to focus on more that. And so in doing that, the best resource I've found to looking at the older carvings of the masters, well, what I say the masters for Scandinavian, is the American Swedish Institute out of Minneapolis. If you go on their website, they have a archives of previous what do you call it, exhibits they've had. And you can type in flat plane, or you can type in carving. I think either work. I have it saved under my thing. And I would have to say, of the masters out there like that, Herman Rosel's carvings, I just love them. It's my goal in life to own one. The Herman Rosel carvings have he tells such a story with so simple cuts, and that's the goal. That's really the goal with any of them, is you want your carving to tell a story. These guys are they're pretty rigid. They're straight up and down. But once you've done a couple the regular way, and then you start turning the heads or tilting the heads, then you can get them to start, people look at them going, what's he thinking about? Or what's he looking at? Or, you know, is there one of them kids over there with his stupid pants down around below his waist? Or is there a baby in the carriage that he's watching? So I hope that answered, but yeah, I'd have to say, of all of them, Herman Rosel is my favorite.
Thanks, Johnny. Answers the question.
John, you did a lumberjack with a red shirt. Is that your own pattern or somebody else's?
That's my pattern.
Very cool.
Thank you. That was one I wanted to do for a long time, and I thought it was above my skill level. And I took the long, on a lot of my carvings, I tend to take the long way around. Even since the Cooley Region wood carvers have drugged me kicking and screaming into teaching for them there a couple times, I've had to come up with my own patterns, because I'm not going to go down and teach somebody else's hard work. So I've started to come up with a couple of my own patterns. A lot of them are based off of the one pattern I have is very similar to this guy. mostly what I was going for was this posture that he had here. But even with that pattern, so that I can make a cutout, I have a front view to cut out and I have the side view to cut out. I still leave on all of them a big, I'm trying to keep things in the, if you guys seen my camera setup, you'd laugh. It's yeah. Anyway, I still leave a big block like this. And we're going to block in this head here, and I'll explain to you why I leave a big block like that for what I'm doing. Part of the reason is I never know what I'm going to do with it. The reason I leave this big block here, if I was to have your typical looking straightforward guy here and his eyes would be in here and his nose would be here and a smile here and he's going to have a chin. So we go and we bandsaw all that out. We follow the bandsaw. Now all this wood is gone. But by leaving the big block, even on my bandsaw patterns, get rid of that. It makes it so that I can tilt the head here. I can put that face over like this. Or I can tilt it the other way. Or I can just straight out change where my corner is. And just have his head. It doesn't have to be tilted. It can be just a new center line and have him looking off to the side. I tend not to, this is just me, I tend not to go to this corner and make a new face. I think it gives people a little more a subtle turn versus a hard turn, depending on what you want your character to do, can say a lot more. Just because you look at it and you think something's different, but what's different? And then they got to look at it a little bit longer. If that makes sense. For this fella, we're going to just give him a straight on because I don't know how much time we've used up already.
You're just in at an hour, John, so you're still in good shape. Keep going.
So there's a couple ways you can do this. I prefer to carve faces off of the face of the block just for that reason, that you can put them wherever. The only thing I ever really carve off a corner is Christmas ornaments, so I can get a bigger face out of a smaller block. But otherwise, for the most part, I don't really carve anything off the corner. Or if I'm practicing, I'll have little pieces of these wood in my truck with, there'll be noses or eyes or something from one end of it to the other, up and down both sides. Then I'll do that off the corner. For this, since we're going to put a hat on them, I'm just going to go ahead and round this right away. And just like my unconventional start at the bottom, I'm going to draw in his hat. And I do this for ornaments and whatever. I will cut up underneath that hat. This hat's going to actually be way too big to start with, but it's easier for me to get the head underneath the hat versus having the hat sitting on top of his head by doing this. So I'm just going to bring this in a little bit. If I was a more confident carver, I would know that I could take from here, I could take most all of that off because that hat's actually going to come and live outside of that hat. It's going to be here. I kind of like to sneak up on it, I guess, is a way to put it. I think I'm not a huge fan of carving from a rough out, just a personal thing. I think most of that is because I'm used to removing a lot of wood. So it's nice to have some wood there to get rolling on, kind of build up a head of steam, so to speak, as I get going. So I'm gonna figure out how wide I want them. I usually give all these guys, I call it my little Dutch boy haircut. When it's done, it kind of looks like the little Dutch boy off of those paint cans. So come in here, this will be the side of the face. I'm gonna actually square it up again a little bit. Bring that hair out from the side of the head. And I'll get that off, and then I'll hold it for the camera and show you what I got going. And the puppy just came in and stole a mouthful of wood chips. At least he's not barking. So there, sometimes it focuses right away. There. Rough as a cob, but what I did was I just brought in the sides a little bit to bring that hair out. And then we'll build us a new corner where his nose is going to live. Awkward silence. So, and I generally start here at the top of the nose. Now for my style, I do the cartoon eye all the time. James Miller just did a carving where I love the flat plane style eyes he did, and I'm going to try a little bit of them. But for this one, this is quick and dirty too. There's a lot to be said for these cartoon eyes. If the eyes, it doesn't matter if they're cartoon or not. If you connect the eyes, one can be bigger than the other, and it looks like it's supposed to be that way. But as soon as you separate them eyes, then they kind of have to be similar. So I cut in here, and we're going to cut down here. And I know I'm rushing this, guys. I think most of you probably already seen it on my Facebook page. There's a step-by-step how-to on how I do the faces, and there's a step-by-step for one of these guys. I think it's labeled bunny step-by-step, because for the Easter bunnies, everything from the bottom to here is the same, other than leaving wood for a tail here. And if you want to put them in bibs, or they don't have to be in a jacket like this. So everything that's rushed here, if you guys go on the Facebook, just dig through the albums and see what you can find.
John.
Yeah.
It's Daniel. What is your email address, or not your website rather?
Well, I don't have a website. I have a Facebook page.
Okay,
It's Dry Creek Carvings.
alrighty. Thank you.
And John, can you tell the story about how you got the name Dry Creek Carving?
Sure. I was trying to come up with a fun little business name. And I grew up in the Twin Ports, Duluth Superior, on the shore of Lake Superior. I live about 2 hours from there now. I'm about a little over an hour south and about an hour east. But I still go back home every year to, we have a hunting shack on the shore of Lake Superior. And out in the middle of the woods, it's on the map and everything, there's a spot called Dry Creek. There's only ever water in it in the springtime. And it's not even a creek. It's just gets wet. But I've even come through there on deer drives and in the middle of the woods found beaver dams. The beavers started building a dam when there was water there in the spring, and then by June, July, there's no more water left and they had to abandon their projects. So I just always liked the ring. It had a nice sound to it. Plus it kind of summed up, you know, everybody goes through some dry times with any kind of business venture or whatnot, even though I don't officially, according to the government, have a business. I just sell just enough to keep me in the wood and tools and whatnot. Okay, so here, I'm gonna point with this. What I did, I got a center line through his nose and a center line. I'm gonna shut the door again. Okay. When I set up for these eyes, his nose is gonna live here, obviously. At the center line. I want this to taper back. So the highest point is out here, right here is your highest point. And I want it to taper down and in, and also to taper out this way, so that it's, I don't know how to, maybe it'll sharpen my, it's from here out, it's tapered this way, and from here it's tapered down in. I think that kind of shows it. We'll give them a quick nose. And what I found for these noses that works for me is to make them backwards. It's actually wider on the top than it is on the bottom, which is kind of backwards. Look away, Stetson. None of this is going to fit with what you taught us. Yeah. Get that more. Get that more. Again, everything's pretty quick and dirty on for the show here today. So there, I brought out his nose. Chin and everything's still way out here. That don't matter yet. About halfway up or so on the nose, we'll draw in some smile lines. Typically what you see on the Scandinavian ones are the smile lines are crazy. They're big, they're bold, they'll sometimes run all the way through the bottom of the carving. They're one thing that is far from being realistic as can be, but they work. I think I said it before for a fella. I'll leave these harsh and sharp. If this was going to be a female, after I get everything in there, I would I'd probably round this off more right there. So I'm going to thin the temples a little more. Bring that in. A little bit straight. This guy's ended up a little bit flat. So at this point, what I'll usually do, before I draw in the mouth, I want to kind of set how my nose is going to be. And I'm going to take this front of this nose down at an angle and then down at a second angle. And I'll show you a profile view here as soon as I get her. And then one little undercut at the bottom. And that, well, so the top is going to be the furthest out. I come in at an angle and then I come in at a second angle. And then the very bottom, I undercut it a little bit. And I found out the hard way that if I do the nose, or if I do the mouth before I do that, and then I cut the mouth, or the nose after the mouth, I end up with them too far apart. Little trick I learned from Harley's class was upturned noses are cute, and having the mouth closer to the nose than it should be tends to give it a little bit of a cuter, better look. So I usually put my mouth, and I'm gonna give them a smile, but I never give them just a dead even smile, maybe more of a smirk. This is one of the places where I know I should take the chin off first, but I don't know exactly what point it's going to look good. So I'll cut the mouth in, and I'll probably end up cutting the mouth in one more time, because right now the chin's way out there. Unless we wanted to look like an old guy that left his teeth in the glass. Just so everybody knows, this is the most I've talked in 10 years. Not somebody that sits and jabbers. All right. We got a little bit of a mouth in there, but you can tell that because of the angle of all that, that ain't right. So this is where we're going to fix it. So I like to blend the bottom of this where his smile line ends and his chin's going to be. I'm going to roll that through there. And we're going to roll underneath. Roll. Oop. Seeing here, we're going to round off the bottom. We're going to take and roll that out here. And now from that chin, we're going to kind of sneak up on that mouth and get it to the point where it's going down with that bottom lip just a little bit under the top lip. Guys.
Hey, John, another question in the chat. Use mostly a knife. What determines when you use a gouge or a V-tool?
Hair. If I'm I usually just, that's about the only time I use it. I'll use that big Bishop ocular tool. Something like somebody asked me about the Paul Bunyan that I did. I only saw it out one view of that, and that was a pretty good sized carving for me. And I use that Bishop tool quite a bit for roughing on that. This guy's got some issues. But otherwise, the only time I use a V-tool or a gouge is when I do hair. And a lot of times on one like this one, I'll do hair with my knife. And this obviously has to come way in. And if I'm gonna do hair with the knife, there's a couple different methods of doing that. You can do your squiggly lines like a chip cut, or you can roll your knife as such. I like the look of the rolled knife cuts. But if I'm gonna commit to doing that with the knife, I will take my knife and I'll pretty much just tap on the carving, but I will go around it. This one I know I can. And I will make sure ahead of time that I can reach all the points before I do it, because say one like this, I wouldn't be able to do that knife roll. I'd be able to do it over here, but as soon as I got around this hand, I can't get in there and do it. So I don't want to jump from one style to another. You want to be consistent in, you know, if you start with a V-tool, finish with a V-tool. If you start with a knife, finish with a knife is the main thing there. This is one lopsided face. There we go. But it kind of shows everybody, it kind of shows everybody the process, at least I go through. And I think most everybody's on Facebook. If you can look at those step-by-step ones, and you don't have to listen to me babbling the whole time either. And then one other cut that I do on these is I'll run a stop cut here at the bottom of the eye, and I'm gonna take and scoop the top of this cheek, and I'm gonna scoop the top of this cheek. And I'll take around that nose, and then I'll go back in a little bit, and oh.
Hey, John, what size block did you start with for that carving, do you know?
For the one that I'm doing right now?
Yeah.
This one was about 1 1/4 inches. About 1 1/4 inches square by about 5 inches long. For this one. Kind of time constraints and trying to show something. You know, if I'd have started with a bigger block, it would have been even, well, uglier and rougher. This thing's rough as a cob, but I see we're almost at 1.5 hours, but I would be bringing this in quite a bit. There wouldn't be, you can see on this guy here, bring that hat up in there. That's that little Dutch boy haircut, I call it.
Now, before we finish, can you talk a little bit about your finishing technique as far as
Oh boy,
how you seal it, all that kind of thing?
highly technical and top secret paint techniques. I don't put a whole lot into painting because I'm not. What do you bring in? Dog brought in a frozen turd. Anyway, I like to paint on bare wood. I like it when my carvings look older and faded. There's some downsides to painting on bare wood because you don't always know what you're going to get until the finish hits it. But what I do is I've got a mini muffin tin, and I turn on the faucet and I run it around there, but I run it quick so that some have more and some have less water. So if I'm going to do white, I'll pick one with less water, and I'll squirt some paint in there and I'll stir it up. And the way I'm doing it, I'm probably mixing my paint quite a bit thicker than what you guys do when you've sealed the carving first, because this wood's going to take that paint pretty hard and fast. So my biggest issue with painting personally is not that I dislike it that much. I like earth tones, and I'm not good at picking what colors go with other colors. So, and what it looks like on bare wood versus what it looks like on once I seal them with Howard's feed and wax, and once the feed and wax hits, it completely changes the look. So paintings can be an adventure for me, I guess I would say. But I'll paint bare wood. Generally, I'm only at one coat. Sometimes, depending on how the wood is taking the paint, I might have to go to 2 coats. But for the most part, 1 coat. I don't paint any flesh tones. I should be putting a little bit of a blush in, but every time I've tried it, I've made a big mess out of it. So I tend to shy away from doing it. Until I can learn how to do it right, I'm not going to do it. And then after they're good and dry, I'll hit them pretty heavy with Howard's feed and wax, at which point I'll let them sit at least a day and let that wood really just soak it in, get it in there good and deep. Then after that, I'll take in paper towel, get the heavy part off, and then shoe polish brush, buff it out. Then you almost got to let it sit for a day or 2 more, because chances are after you get the bulk of it off, within about 2 or 3 days, you'll see it start to kind of in the corners where you didn't get it that good, and you got to get it again to buff it out where that wax kind of congealed up. The biggest reason I use Howard's feed and wax over anything else is because we live in a small town. We don't even have a stoplight in Phillips, but they have Howard's feed and wax at my grocery store or at my hardware store. So it's accessible, it's cheap. That's why I use it. I don't have the option of running to Menards, Lowe's, Home Depot, or that kind of thing. The closest Walmart or Menards is 45 miles away. So for me to when I am there, I will buy some different things to try out and see how I like them or whatnot. But for me, it's not something I can just do on a whim to say I want to try this or that. I tend to stick more to earth tones. I always tell everybody, if you like red and green or green and red, I'm your man. I like those together. We can give them some butt cheeks here while we're still talking. Anybody else has a question?
How do you set up the hat on that guy, the front of the cap?
How do I set it up? Where'd my pencil go? Depending on how much room I have or what kind of hat I want to do. So, this one, you got to bring this all down in here tight to this hair. Get that in here a little closer to his hair. So if I want to do a ball cap, one thing that drives me nuts is when I see, unless the carving is copying something that dictates it, is when I see hats that are sitting perfectly square on a head. Nobody wears their hat so that it's perfectly square on their head. So I always drop them down. I'll drop them down quite a bit. And on this, I would still be bringing this hair all the way back in here and most of this hat off. But so at this point right here, if I'm going to give them a ball cap, the hardest part with this particular carving, it's hard to give them a traditional ball cap because you want his head inside the hat. You don't want his head outside the hat. And it's hard to get his forehead tucked all the way underneath the brim. So I always kind of look at the I don't know the technical name for that style hat. Anybody know what they're called? I forget the name. They used to be real popular. Or anybody from the northern states knows what a cromer is. Cromers have a short bill. You can give them that style hat, but I'll put my brim in, and then I'll start a little thick, because if it's gonna break, it's gonna break on a hat. And I'll start working it up. I'm working it back, I'm sorry. Railroad conductor's hat's got a short, any kind of hat that's got a short brim, and most of them are going to be similar to a baseball cap, but you're never going to get a full baseball cap brim on here and still have his head in his hat. It's, so it's not really going to look right. Yeah, like the newsboy caps. There you go. Thank you. But here again, because the hat's sloping down this way, this has got to come down this way. And then actually can come in this way as such. Somebody asked if I have any other hobbies. I used to. It's live, Jen. Sorry.
John, your baseball caps in Minnesota are different than ours.
I'm not in Minnesota. Minnesota is different. But
Minnesota, Wisconsin, same difference, right?
Oh no, them are fighting words. Growing up in the Twin Ports on the border, every time you get a job, they don't ask you what your qualifications are. They ask you if you're a Brewers or Twins fan, or they ask you if it's Packers or Vikings, depending on the season. I think that depends on. They used to care about the North Stars until they left, so then nobody cared to win. Oh, there goes his hat, because I'm Russian. So what do you do if his brim comes off? You push everything back a little bit, and you give him a stocking cap. Give him a toque. I don't know if I got any Tom, you're Canadian. You know what a toque is, don't you?
I'm wearing a toque, John.
I have a friend that does reenactment stuff, and she made me a French voyageur's toque. So anyway, I think I could have showed you better with pencil lines than I did with my Russian things here. But he could have had a hat there, and he could have had his brim. No, I think I'd give him a like I said, a little stocking cap on there, put a little ball off to the side or something, give it a little character because it's not in the middle. It is wintertime.
Well, John, we're at about 25 till 5, and I hate to cut you off because I know you could do more and more. I'm sure everybody will be excited about watching it, but to be aware of everyone's time, we'll go ahead and stop you there. And I just want to say thank you for coming on. I know it was a lot. I know you aren't used to being on camera and talking to people and that kind of thing. So I appreciate you taking your time out to show us what you've done today. Before we get to the rest of the announcements, I think Tom's going to go ahead and do the drawing. Again, we're doing a $100 gift card drawing from Chipping Away. They've donated this. So again, go out and check out their website. It's chippingaway.com. Make sure you contact them for any of your carving needs and let them know that we sent you. And Tom, I'll go ahead and turn it over to you and let you do the live drawing. He's taking time out to write everybody's name down. Tom, I want to thank you for all that you do. You do all the behind the scenes stuff, and especially drawings and stuff like this. It takes quite a bit of your time, so I appreciate that. Tom, we'll go ahead and let you do the drawing now.
All right, thanks, Blake. Thanks everybody for showing up. Like Blake said, we had 182 people here, so writing down everyone's name was a bit taxing. I even had to go get a bigger pot to put them in. So anyways, whoever I draw, please stick around so I can get your email address, and we'll send that $100 gift card off to you. So the person is Dan Shera. If you're still on here, please stick around and we'll get that to you. All right, Blake, up to you.
All right, thank you all again. Again, like Tom said, this is the biggest meeting as far as attendance goes that we've had so far. We had 182 people. It just goes to show the need that we had to upgrade our Zoom subscription. Again, we've upgraded that to the $500 or 500 person limit. That's a little more than $500. So what we wanted to say is thank you all that have donated to the Buy Us a Coffee Fund. That money goes directly to cover the Zoom costs that we have to be able to have these meetings every week. So thank you for participating in that. Again, the links for the Buy Me a Coffee Fund will be on our Instagram page, on our Facebook page. It'll also be linked on the video on YouTube. Make sure you go in on the YouTube channel and like and subscribe those videos. All of our meetings are out there for you to go back and rewatch, and this one will also be out there later on this afternoon. We wanted to remind you of some upcoming classes that are coming up. Again, Dave Stetson has a class that's going to be starting pretty soon, early February, on a dancing fiddler. If you're interested in his class, reach out to him. Kevin Applegate has an iron mic class that he's going to be doing. Janet Cordell is going to be doing a grizzly bear class. Ryan Olson's working on a hot tub caricature carving class that'll start in March. And Dwayne Gosnell has a pirate carving class that he's going to be starting, I think either in March or early April. So reach out to Dwayne if you're interested in that. Again, Dwayne will be on with us in February. So quite a few things to get involved in. We want to thank Wood Carving Academy for supporting us. Again, a lot of the classes and things that have been going on are out there on Wood Carving Academy. So make sure you go to woodcarvingacademy.com and check out what they offer. If you're interested in classes and working at your own pace, you may want to go check those classes out. And again, we meet here every week on Saturday, 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, where we try to help as many carvers as we can and hope that people are enjoying getting together during the pandemic and talk about carving. Next week, if you're interested in handmade knives, We're going to have Sean Mullenbelt from 51 Bravo Knives on. He's going to talk about hand forged carving knives, new opportunity for getting a knife out there. So if you're looking for a unique knife, join in next week so Sean can explain to you how he does that. And then all through February and March, we have people lined up. So make sure you join us. Thank you all for attending today, and we'll see you all next Saturday at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Thank you.
Thanks, Blake.